The full power of the gospel of Jesus Christ is contained in the Book of Mormon, period.
Remember this declaration by Jesus himself. Whoso treasureth up my word shall not be deceived. And in the last days, neither your heart nor your faith will fail you.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Book of Mormon podcast. This is Shelby and
Kevin.
As always, we are here to talk about the Book of Mormon, and we are in Ether chapter 2 this week. But before we start, Kev, anything you want to share about your week?
I had my first pathway gathering. I haven't announced it on the podcast because we haven't necessarily been keeping up to date each week. I was called to serve as a service missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in the North America Southwest area. And my call is to teach institute classes online to BYU pathway students. And it is pretty cool because I myself was a BYU pathway student that went through that. And so now I'm getting to do it on the other end. So
the love and passion that Kevin had, or has, I should say, for BYU Pathways, like I always have wanted him to work for BYU Pathways, and he's definitely tried a few times, but I guess the Lord wants him in this capacity, and the Lord had some plans for our life. Like we were trying to move all over the place. We were like, let's go to Utah, let's go to Missouri, let's go to Lubbock, but the Lord was like, no, you're staying here, and gave us very clear answers. And so I think this is that way to fulfill a desire for you. That, I mean, I had it for you, and I think you had it for yourself too. So I'm just really so excited for Kevin.
Yeah, for the record's sake, I had applied to several jobs with BYU Pathway, which would have taken me actually internationally.
Yeah, it would have been really cool.
It would have been a pretty big deal, and I didn't necessarily get those opportunities, and I didn't know why. I was like, what the heck? And I just kept doing what I was supposed to be doing, working at my job that I currently work at, which I do really like. So it's kind of like, do I want to work for a company that I really, really like, or do I want to work for the Lord's church as an employee? And it's like, it's hard.
Yeah.
But
it's a good mix right now, though.
It's a good mix right now because now I get to serve as a missionary again, and name tag and all, y'all. It's really cool.
He goes, I got Shelby, you're married to an elder now, and I was like, you've always been an elder. Like you were ordained an elder when you were on your mission, but he's like, yeah, but I got the tag now, so
it's pretty cool.
It's pretty fun. As for me, I am feeling a little bit under the weather, like sinus wise. I'm feeling good, but I feel like I sound not like myself, so apologies there. But we actually just endured a snowstorm of 2025 here in Texas for 2 days. That was great. And our little girl, Addie, loved it. And she would have been out there for longer if we let her. But that was our week.
And we are on day 12 of 75 hard.
Yes.
So, to those of you who know about 75 hard, it is a 75-day challenge in which you have to...
Can I explain it?
Of course.
Okay. You have to do 5 things every day, no matter what. Like, no matter what, guys. Nothing stops you from doing these 5 things. So the 5 things are 2 workouts, each being 45 minutes each. I said each twice, but you get my point. And one of them is outside, and the other one can be wherever you want, outside, inside, whatever you want to do. The third one is to drink a gallon of water every single day. The fourth one is to read 10 pages of a book. And the fifth one is to take a progress picture each day. So, and then I guess 6 actually, because you also have to stick to a diet. It's not specific, but the point is that you're avoiding sugars and things like that. So,
right.
I guess it's 6.
Yep.
I'm used to saying 5. I don't know why. Anyway, that's enough. We'll cap our recap now at like 5 minutes, and we'll get into the scriptures now.
Oh yeah. But,
sound good?
You know, I like giving a little update now.
Yeah, thank you to our friend Kimber. Shout out.
Yeah.
That was her suggestion. Okay, Ether chapter 2. We are going to read the chapter heading like we always do, and then we'll go from there. The Jaredites prepare for their journey to a promised land. It is a choice land wherein men must serve Christ or be swept off. The Lord talks to the brother of Jared for 3 hours. The Jaredites build barges. The Lord asks the brother of Jared to propose how the barges will be lighted. So, I think to start, we should reference back to Ether chapter 1 really quick, which is where we had talked a lot about revelation and inquiring of the Lord. And the last question that was asked was, should we go, or are we going to be driven out of the land? And if we are going to go somewhere, where should we go? Maybe it would be a choice land.
It was that very specific question.
Yes. And so the Lord does tell him to gather all these, his flocks, his families, all the people he's asked that could come, and to raise up seed, and that he'll be a great nation. So this is kind of, yes, sorry, you put your hand up.
I just wanted to say that in that vein, right, of asking specific questions, we as saints also have to use our intuition and our understanding of what's going on around us to talk to the Lord about, hey, this is what I observe is going on. Is this what you are going to do? Like, are you going to drive us out of this land, or are you going to guide us out of this land to a land of promise? We just talked about our personal.
Oh yeah, like where are we going?
Yeah, where are we going?
Yeah, this was back at the end of 2023 when all this was going on.
Yeah, 2023, and we were talking. I was conversing with the Lord daily. About,
I said, "Prove me herewith."
Yeah.
I was like, "All right, prove me," and he did.
Yeah, I was like, "Hey, what do you want me to do? We have these opportunities. Where should we plant our roots? And there were a couple of options, but we made it. I don't know. I think we did make it specific, in a way. Like we knew we wanted a home. We wanted certain things. We wanted a community. And we got it all.
Yeah. Yeah, we did. Anyway, how does that, Brother Jared, how it ties back in is they are also, quite frankly, cut to the chase, kind of have it all, but it doesn't come without the trials.
Sure.
Right. And the things that happen to their family. So that's what we're going to read about. So, verse 1, everybody goes down to the valley northward, which the valley is named Nimrod, being called after the mighty hunter, which I think Nimrod, do we have reference to him? Yeah, he's in Genesis. Is that right?
Yeah, we know Nimrod from
Nimrod. And so, anyway, I thought that was cool how I made the connection. Like, by the way, I don't know if that was inserted by Moroni, like he was after the mighty hunter, like reminding us, or because it's in parentheses. And so,
well, obviously it's from Moroni.
You think so? I mean, oh yeah, you're right.
Like,
Fun moment.
Who else?
I'm just saying, like, it could have been like the record written that way, like as a reminder, and you just kind of took it word for word. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know. I
Anyway.
think it's.
But it makes more sense that it's Moroni.
Yeah.
But they gather together, male and female of every kind, and they start to prepare this vessel. It says they did also lay snares and catch fowls of the air, and they did also prepare a vessel in which they did carry with them the fish of the waters. So that's pretty cool. I'm sure there's more things we're missing there, but.
And this is interesting, very, very cool. In verse 3, they did also carry with them Deseret, which by interpretation is a honeybee. And thus they did carry with them swarms of bees and all manner of that which is upon the face of the land, seeds of every kind. There is a lot that we could drill down into with the honeybee. There's a lot of symbolism and really cool stuff. Go study the honeybee. Maybe on the next pass through the Book of Mormon, because we are planning more content for the next time through the Book of Mormon podcast. Let's talk about the honeybee when we go down that deep dive.
Also, something that Kevin and I have been doing for like 8 or 9 months, actually almost a year now, is trying to view the scriptures through the temple lens, like with the temple eye. So those that are endowed or have been through the temple, you can view these scriptures in that way, and it kind of opens your mind to the deeper meaning of some of these scriptures. But also the seeds of every kind. I mean, that's important. This has a lot of symbolism or relation to when Noah had to prepare for a flood. Right. Not that they're preparing for a flood.
I mean, there's also you also, I think the definition of colonizing a land is to plant seeds or like to grow things on.
Yeah.
So by bringing these seeds, they're going to colonize a new land. There's an intention there. Like, they're not just going for a picnic, they're not just going for a little, they're going to go to this new place and establish a colony, right? And there's what we would call Zion.
Yeah, for sure. So in verse 4, they come down into the valley of Nimrod, and the Lord actually talks to the brother of Jared here. And it says he was in a cloud, and the brother of Jared saw him not. So I like to think of this cloud as the veil, like not really being able to see the Lord, but knowing he's there behind the veil on the other side.
Right, because we can't
we're unclean. We can't be in his presence.
We can't be in his presence. We can't handle
the glory
of his presence. So this cloud is obscuring him from view, right? Really cool.
And so what's the Lord talking to him about? So he says this, and it came to pass, we're in verse 5, that the Lord commanded them that they should go forth into the wilderness, yea, into that quarter where there never had man been. And it came to pass that the Lord did go before them, and did talk with them as he stood in a cloud, and gave directions whither they should travel. So this is really cool to me. My favorite part is it says that the Lord did go before them. So he prepared the way, right? I think back to First Nephi. We all know when Nephi goes and gets the plates, he says, I don't, not in so many words, I will go, I will do the things the Lord command. And that's the kind of thing I'm getting here, is that I know the Lord commanded me, and I'm going to do it anyway, even if I don't know how. So same thing here with Jared and his family.
Yeah, absolutely. It came to pass that they did travel in the wilderness and did build barges in which they did cross many waters, being directed continually by the hand of the Lord. And the Lord would not suffer that they should stop. Or, excuse me.
That was right, yeah.
And the Lord would not suffer that they should stop beyond the sea in the wilderness, but he would that they should come forth even unto the land of promise, which was choice above all other lands, which the Lord God had preserved for a righteous people.
So I have a question, but I'm going to hold it until we get a little bit further down about the barges.
Mm-hmm.
But they've built these barges many times, right? Like they've had to build some and then leave them and then build more, right? They've constantly had to be building barges, as I take it.
Is that true?
I think so, because, well, we are talking about the chapter, but hold on.
Barges.
Pause.
They did build barges.
Yeah, but they built many. Yeah, so in verse 16, when Jared, the brother of Jared's talking to the Lord, he says, "Go to work and build after the manner of barges which ye have hitherto built." So these barges have been being built over the course of this journey. And my understanding is that they're getting better at building these barges. So the reason I point this out is because there's some things that happen, if you know about the brother of Jared, where he's trying to figure out how to light the barges. And so I bring this up because this principle of like growing into revelation, I think also comes through like the barges, like their first edition barge, right, to get from A to B, and then they get there, and then okay, we got to build new ones. Second edition barges, now we're going to go from point B to point C, and so they're like continually improving, just like we continually improve in Revelation. Cool. So anyway, I jumped way ahead from like verse 6 to 16.
No, but that's important.
Yeah, I do think it plays in there.
Being directed continually by the hand of the Lord.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And these are voyagers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like Moana. Just kidding. That's my favorite movie. Is Moana. Okay. So in verse 7, did we already read 7? I don't know
No,
if we did.
We did not. And the Lord would not suffer that they should stop.
Yes, we did.
Oh, yeah, they did.
We did read.
Excuse me.
So the reason I brought this up was because he doesn't want them to stop. It says, don't stop beyond the sea. Like, keep going to your land of promise that's preserved for you. Mm-hmm. And then in verse 8, he goes and says, and he had sworn in his wrath unto the brother of Jared that whoso should possess this land of promise from that time henceforth and forever should serve him, the true and only God, or they should be swept off the fullness of his wrath, swept off when the fullness of his wrath should come upon them. Go ahead.
That's the conditional
promise
that is always, related to, I guess, the children of Israel. We see it with Lehi all through the Book of Mormon. This is the same thing, right? Inasmuch as you keep my commandments, you will prosper in the land. And if you don't, you will be swept off. And I just think it's so clear here, though. It's like very, very clear.
Also in verse 9, it gets even more clear.
Yes, it's plain language, right? Now, that's cool, because these people are speaking the perfect language.
Yeah.
Right? So
their language has not been confounded.
It's not been confounded. And so the Lord is able to speak to them, and they're able to understand maybe exceptionally clearly. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. And now in verse 9, right?
Yeah.
And now we can behold the decrees of God concerning this land, that it is a land of promise, And whatsoever nation shall possess it shall serve God, or they shall be swept off when the fullness of his wrath shall come upon them. And the fullness of his wrath cometh upon them when they are ripened in iniquity.
Yes, we've talked about being ripened in iniquity a lot on this podcast, that's a prerequisite to destruction, basically. And that starts to come when the hardening of hearts come and they reject the words of the prophets and all these things. So that is what that sentence means, to be ripened in iniquity. If you also think of Jacob chapter 5 and the allegory of the olive tree, that when the fruit are ripe or wild, right, that's when they're ready to be hewn down. And so there's a lot of symbolism there about the ripening of that. But he continues to just talk about this land, that this land is a choice land. You basically serve God or be swept off it. Mm-hmm. And
he addresses the Gentiles.
Mm-hmm. And in verse 11 specifically, he invites, as he always does, it says that you may repent and not continue in your iniquities until the fullness come, that you may not bring down the fullness of the wrath of God upon your inhabitants of the land have hitherto done. So he's saying don't fall into what other people have already done, and make sure that you're repenting, so you can stay on this land.
This is addressing us, right?
This one right
here? Yeah.
I think he's talking to Jared. This is the Lord talking to Jared in the cloud, right?
I mean, who is speaking?
That was the Lord.
Yeah, this in verse 11, it's addressing us. I mean, we are in the house of Israel, right? We've been adopted, so to speak,
baptized
through covenant.
Yeah.
Into the house of Israel. However, the United States is a Gentile nation, mm-hmm. right? So, and this cometh unto you, O ye Gentiles, that you may know the decrees of God, that you may repent and not continue in your iniquities until the fullness come, that you may not bring down the fullness of the wrath of God upon you, as the inhabitants of the land have hitherto done. Right?
Like, this is Moroni speaking.
This is Moroni speaking, and also like all this crying from the earth, for many hundreds of years before the colonial settlement of the nation, right? Mm-hmm. There were wars and just horrible genocides. It's not like everyone was like peacefully living here on this land prior to Columbus, right? And so when they did settle here, there's like a warning that's like let out to them, and the Book of Mormon has this warning to us to this day. Like, this land that we are on now in North America, actually all of the American continent, all of the American continents. Excuse me. I don't want to exclude anybody over here. But these are promised lands, and the people who have possessed them at certain times ripened in iniquity and were swept off, right? The Lord will prosper whoever keeps his commandments. It's pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's jump to 13, because 11 and 12 are just more of the same thing that we've been talking about.
Sure.
So now,
But 11, you said 12 and 13?
no, let's skip to verse 13.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. So 13 it says, and now I proceed with my record. So pause in what Moroni was saying back to brother of Jared, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's still Moroni talking, but he's getting back to the story of the brother of Jared.
Right.
For behold, it came to pass that the Lord did bring Jared and his brethren forth even to that great sea which divideth the lands. And as they came to the sea, they pitched their tents, and they called the name of the place Moriancumer. And they dwelt in tents dwelt in tents upon the seashore for the space of 4 years. So the land is Moriancumer, named Moriancumer after the brother of Jared, who we know as Moroni Ha Moriancumer is his name. Most positive. No, I'm saying it wrong. Okay, listen, I know I'm saying his name wrong. The last part of his name, I'm not saying wrong. Moriancumer is fine. But his first name is Mahon. We're feeling real funny tonight. Mahonri. Mahoroni? I don't know. But anyway, it's named after him, right? He's the leader.
Yes.
But we don't know that until later.
Right. It's revealed.
When Joseph gets the revelation.
Right. It's revealed in latter days what his name is, which is pretty cool.
I know.
But here it is. Like,
yeah.
Go figure. Like,
obviously.
they obviously name places by the people who discovered them. Yeah. Right. And so.
Anyway, something that's significant here that we talked about earlier is the Lord wanted them to keep going to the promised land, but we see here that they paused for 4 years, okay? And we don't really get much of what they did in those 4 years, but I can only assume that they started colonizing a little bit. Not necessarily the colonization of the promised land, but they're living. I mean, they're there for 4 years. They've got to start building houses and obtaining food and doing these things. And the civilization.
Oh yeah.
They forget where the Lord is wanting them to head, which was the promised land. And I'm sure that this probably appeared like the promised land, right? Like I'm sure that this seemed real great, like a real great place to settle. I don't think they just choose to settle somewhere, not thinking that it would be good, So
correct.
Here they are chilling. I won't say, well, they're still working, but they're not at the promised land yet.
Right.
And in verse 14, at the end of these 4 years,
I think there's something there though that we can dig into, like.
Oh, 100% we could dig in. Do you want to dig in?
I mean, this is the Book of Mormon podcast.
Well,
like you don't settle for.
Well, that's why I say there's probably things that appeared
right.
like that, because I don't think they would have just stopped. This has a place for honeybees. This has this. There's water. There's
right
things that we can use.
But nobody said this is the place.
Correct. And there was, as far as we know, there wasn't any confirmation.
Right.
That
they settled there for time. They got comfortable. They started, doing things their way, and they named the place, right?
Yeah. I think that there's times in our own lives where obviously we think that we may have quote unquote arrived where we need to be, but the Lord has bigger things in store and knows that we need to keep moving. And the only way that he can keep us moving is if we're remembering him and we're calling upon him.
Right.
And so that leads us to what happens to the brother of Jared.
And what happens?
He gets rebuked. Like real bad.
Well, it came to pass at the end of the 4 years that the Lord came again unto the brother of Jared and stood in a cloud and talked with him. And for the space of 3 hours, did the Lord talk with the brother of Jared and chastened him because he remembered not to call upon the name of the Lord. So what was the brother of Jared doing for 4 years? Now this reminds me of a Joseph Smith moment, right? Where Joseph, you know, being a boy, being a dude, he kind of lets his foot off the pedal a little bit and feels like he comes, he gets off the path, and then he has to come back and repent and say like, no, I know I'm meant for this restoration. I know I'm supposed to do this. And then that's when Moroni comes back and continues to work with him. And so I think this is inherent in man, right?
You know what I love about it though, about both the stories and just this inherent nature, is that the Lord lets it happen.
Yes.
Right? Because we have our agency.
And I bet some good things happened in those 4 years.
And I don't think it was that he never called upon the Lord. I think it was that, I mean, I know it says he didn't. I think it was that he wasn't asking for direction anymore.
He didn't ask those questions.
Yes,
right?
He wasn't. I think he was grateful. I think he was praying, reading scriptures. I think he was doing all those things. I think he lost sight of where they were headed, quite literally.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's important in our own lives to not lose sight of where we're headed, right? Begin with the end in mind and then work with that and move forward. And so, the Lord finally is like, man, it's not like he's this horrible man leading a nation to horrible things. He finally is like, okay, 4 years, okay, it's been enough. I need to chasten him and let him know that we have more to do.
This, I think, even something's rattling in my head about, like, didn't the saints at some point in the early church, they established the place, they lived there for a couple of years, but they hadn't started building the temple, and the Lord chastened them because they're like, hey, I brought you here because I wanted you to build a temple, and you haven't even started, or you haven't like progressed to the point that I wanted you to. And that's another thing.
Maybe it was Ohio, Kirtland, Ohio.
Yeah, we'd have to go, and somebody knows
someone
it.
Who's listening who's a church history guru, let us know. But yeah, that does sound correct.
Yes.
No, the
so
details don't really know.
But these things happen, and it's just God has only had imperfect people to work with, right? He's only had people who sometimes get off track or don't do what they're supposed to be doing, but he lets it happen, and he allows for repentance and growth. And that's what happens. The brother of Jared in verse 15 repented of the evil which he had done. Now, evil is this like really charged word, but evil just means that he was going against like the will of God, right? He considered it evil, I think. At that point, he's like, whoa, like, I can't believe I was like obstructing the path that God had for us by keeping us here chilling, right? So,
hey, can we pause for a second? So I'm reading the book Choosing Glory by Lillian de Hoyos, and she talks about, lately, the chapter I'm in is talking about stress and handling terrestrial stress, telestial, and celestial stress. So in the realms of like the three kingdoms of glory. And I think here, this evil, it's not the lowest kingdom, right? Which is telestial. It's not a telestial evil. No one's killing anybody evil. No one's, adulterous or anything like that. Those are like some really evil acts of the telestial kingdom. I think this is more of a terrestrial evil where it's the forgetting of the Lord. It's a different type of thing where, we need to be brought up. There is no celestial evil because celestial evil is that doesn't exist. Do you get what I'm saying? But like those are the evils that can exist in the terrestrial state. So I just want to like point that out that it wasn't like that evil you said, but in that kind of context of these building blocks.
Right. Building blocks of
Progression.
society,
Yeah.
progression. I think there's something there, definitely.
But the brother of Jared repents in verse 15, and he calls upon the name of the Lord for him and all of his people that are with him. And this is what the Lord says. He says, I will forgive thee and thy brethren of their sins, but thou shalt not sin any more. For ye shall remember that my spirit will not always strive with man. Wherefore, if ye will sin until ye are fully ripe, ye shall be cut off from the presence of the Lord. Once again, kind of reflecting what we talked about earlier, reiterating some promises. And these are my thoughts upon the land which I shall give you for your inheritance, for it shall be a land choice above all other lands. So the repentance takes place, and I love this because he says, yeah, don't do it anymore. And remember that my spirit doesn't always strive with you when you're not repenting.
And he reminds them that there's better stuff coming.
Well, yeah, in verse 16, he says, and the Lord said, go to work and build after the manner of barges which ye hitherto built. So what I referenced earlier. And it came to pass that the brother of Jared did go to work, and his brethren, and they built barges after the manner which they had built, according to the instructions of the Lord. And they were small, and they were light upon the water, even like unto the lightness of a fowl upon the water.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty cool. So they go to work. He has something for them to do. He didn't just go chasing him to chasing him.
Right.
He chasing him to get him to work and to move forward. So that's a reminder to me that if I'm ever feeling chastened, I have a work to do, right? I have something to do. It's not all is well, you're good now, you repented. No, Shelby, get up and go do what I told you to do.
I like that.
You know? So anyway, they've started to build these barges. And I love verse 17.
Go for it.
Read it? Oh, okay, go ahead. And they were built up after a manner that they were exceedingly tight, even that they would hold water like unto a dish. And the bottom thereof was tight like unto a dish, and the sides thereof were tight like unto a dish. And the ends thereof were peaked, and the top thereof was tight like unto a dish, and the length thereof was the length of a tree. And the door thereof, when it was shut, was tight like unto a dish. So I love this because we get the vibe that these barges were tight like unto a dish. And obviously they're getting better at these barge buildings, right? Like what I pointed out earlier. And now they have the Lord helping them, right? And so all of these things, we get the vibe also. It's kind of like a submarine in a way. Like ain't no water getting in. It's not a submarine, but you get my point. Like nothing's coming in this thing, in this barge. And that's important because they have a long journey to go to the promised land and the water.
Right. Which, maybe in past barges there was
wasn't
some
as long.
Right. There wasn't as strict needs in terms of like, hey, some water got in, it's okay.
Right.
Things like that. But like these are
like
on point.
Edition 5.0. Like they're ready to go,
For that extended journey.
Yeah. And so there's some things that Jared needs to figure out about these barges. And he goes to the Lord to talk to him about it.
Mm-hmm.
And he says in verse 19, and behold, O Lord, in them there is no light, whither shall we steer? And also we shall perish, for in them we cannot breathe, save it is the air which is in them. Therefore we shall perish. So he brings some concerns. There's no light, so how are we going to know where to go? We're going to perish because there's no air as well. And the Lord gives him some answers.
Yeah. It says, behold, thou shalt make a hole in the top and also in the bottom. And when thou shalt suffer for air, thou shalt unstop the hole and receive the air. And if it be so that the water come in upon thee, behold, ye shall stop the hole, that you may not perish in the flood.
Pretty specific here. And I love that specific revelation about the air. And I love 21. The brother of Jared did according as the Lord had commanded. He doesn't question, right? And even what I love is like if I'm listening to the Lord say, put a hole in the top, put a hole, here, and then, I'm thinking, okay, well, what about water comes in? Like the natural man in me is like thinking through this, like, what if the water comes in? And then he's like, oh, by the way, if water comes in, you're just gonna plug the hole back up, And
Right.
it just, I don't know. He doesn't leave any room for like, oh, what about this or what about that? Like it's just, it is what it is,
Right.
Are you gonna go?
He talks about the flood. He's talking about a flood or the flood.
Okay, we talked about this before. I said, was this the same flood as Noah? And you said yes. Remember?
I think the Tower of Babel occurs after.
Oh, wait, but then
the
you
flood.
did come back a couple days later.
Right.
Said, I think I was wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
this is not the same flood as Noah.
He's talking about that you may not perish in the flood. I think he's just talking about an instance of flooding.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. I don't know. Somebody tell us. We're not scriptorians.
I mean, we're close, but
I would not say we're close. Yeah. So at this point, he has another question for the Lord in 22, and it's about the light and the barges. And he says, behold, O Lord, wilt thou suffer that we shall cross this great water in darkness? And the Lord said unto the brother of Jared, what will ye that I should do, that ye may have light in your vessels? For behold, you cannot have windows, for they will be dashed in pieces. Neither shall you take fire with you, for you shall not go by the light of the fire. For behold, you shall be as a whale in the midst of the sea, for the mountain waves shall dash upon you. Nevertheless, I will bring you up again out of the depths of the sea, for the winds have gone forth out of my mouth, and also the rains and the floods have I sent forth. He's still going. So, and behold, I prepare you against these things, for you cannot cross this great deep, save I prepare you against the waves of the sea, and the winds which have gone forth, and the floods which shall come. Therefore, what will ye that I should prepare for you, that ye may have light when ye are swallowed up in the depths of the sea? This was like a really long answer, or a really long way to ask a question for the Lord. Like, why didn't he just stop with, what do you think you should do to have light? He like then goes on to say, you can't do this because of that, and you can't do this because of that, and then you're gonna be like a whale in the sea, and the winds and the rains, but I'm sending them, so don't worry. Like and then to circle back to the question,
right.
Why does he do that? Why does the Lord answer that way, or seek a answer in that way? I mean, I'm not asking for like an answer, like guess what's in my head. Yeah. I'm like genuinely wondering why you think maybe he does that.
I mean, the Lord is teaching the brother of Jared.
That's what I think. I actually thought about Adeline when on her tablet we've taught her how to play the matching game for the Elsa cards, Frozen, and we point out as we're teaching her, well, you already clicked on that one. Do you remember what that one was? And then sometimes she does and sometimes she doesn't remember. Right. And then sometimes she'll make a mistake and like click on it and then go, oh, and then have to find the other card.
Right.
But like, I think it's to teach exactly what you said. It's, hey, I'm going to help you out, but I'm not going to give you the answer. I'm going to like infer some things. Right. And I'm going to teach you about what's to come. And then I'm going to let you decide. Knowing what's to come, knowing that I'm guiding you, and knowing that you can't do these like 3 tangible things for light in your barges. So what do you think you should do?
Right.
Give you all the information before you make a decision.
And then he does come up with a plan.
Yeah, which is a really good one.
Full of faith.
Yes.
Like such a faithful plan.
So good.
What a cliffhanger, right?
Yeah.
That's the end of the chapter. But
so sad.
We'll get into chapter 3 next time. We'll be back soon.
Yeah. I want to keep going, but it's okay. We'll come back next week. Because we came back like we said we would.
Mm-hmm.
I'm proud of us. Anyway, thank you everyone for listening. We hope you enjoyed our fun episode tonight.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.
My dear brothers and sisters, I promise that as you prayerfully study the Book of Mormon every day, you will make better decisions every day. I promise that as you ponder what you study, the windows of heaven will open, and you will receive answers to your own questions and direction for your own life.